So this is the fourth day of Kartik. I'm spelling Kartik is spelled in so many different ways. I'm spelling it this way because for two reasons. This is the spelling that is used in the BBT publications. And we heard the first day that one of the names of Radharani's mother was Kirtida, but another name is Kritika, and so she's called Kartika, Radha's Kartika. Anyway, fourth day of Kartik. And this is a virtual visit to Vrindavan that we've been doing for the past few days. And this evening we're going to be visiting two places. One of them is Brahma Kunda, where the pastime of the Brahma-vimohan Lila occurred. And we're also going to be visiting Chir Ghat, a place where Krishna's stealing of the garments of the gopis. Now, I learned this from Indradumna Maharaj, that there, aside from the one, you'll see some photos of the Brahma Ghat that's downtown Vrindavan, there's another place that's sometimes called Gyan Kund, and there's a sign, I guess you can read the sign, what it says. And here's what the place looks like. It's very large, and not depending upon the season, there's some water or there's no water. I have some photos where there's no water. Here's where there's no water. And where the ghat extends into where the water's supposed to be. Very nice structures. And there's a little temple over in the backside back there. And there's some samadhis of some sadhus that lived their lives here and dedicated their lives in devotion to Krishna in this secluded place. We're not going to be going to this place for our yatra because the road to get there is too difficult. But it has a very interesting feature. There is the cave where, they say, Brahma hid the calves and the cowherd boys. So there's a little archway, and you go down those steps, and there's another set of steps, and you go past those set of steps, and there's another archway, another walkway, and then there is the cave where Brahma hid the calves and the cowherd boys. In addition to this place that's a little bit remote, it's that the scenery is nice, but it's hard to get to. So we'll be visiting this place. It's downtown. This is some photos from long ago. It is said that this place originally was filled with the tears of Brahma, who was crying out of sorrow for his having stolen the calves and the cowherd boys from Krishna. And along the side, there's an ancient temple by the bank of the Brahma Kunda. Now, there's a renovation trust called Braj Vikas Trust, and they fixed it up a bit. Looks a little different, doesn't it? And in the center, on our left now, at the center of the pond, or Kund, is Lord Brahma. In the back side, there's Lord Chaitanya and the 6 Goswamis. And here's a yatra group seated around Brahma Kunda. Here's a close-up of Lord Brahma with the Vedas in one hand and so forth. And it's a nice place to visit. Very near to this place is the place where Bilva Mangala Thakur spent 400 years, or a good portion of his 400 years of his life. And his samadhi is in this vicinity. Of course, everybody knows Bilvamangala Thakur. Bilvamangala Thakur spent the concluding years of his life, lived a long, long life somehow, just glorifying Krishna. He was blind because he poked his eyes out when, in lustful way, he became attracted to a very beautiful woman, etc., etc. But he sang so sweetly, has many songs that are written by him, just glorifying the childhood pastimes of Krishna, the childhood form of Krishna, and his love for Krishna in a very wonderful way. So the Brahma-vimohan Lila took place at this Brahma Kunda, and the story begins before Brahma came to offer his prayers to Krishna. It's the pastime starts with Krishna's slaying of Aghasura. So we're going to cover the pastime. Do you boys know the pastime, Aghasura? You do?
Actually, I went to Brahma Kunda.
You,
Actually, I got some of the dirt there.
some of the dirt?
Yeah, which can also be used as food.
No kidding. From which of the two places did you go? This one? The one we just saw? Or the previous one, the first one?
The Brahma.
Oh, you're saying Brahmanda Kund or Brahma Kund? Brahma. Brahmand. We're not going to Brahmand Kund, not today. You want to go? But not today. We're going to Brahma Kund. So do you know the story of Krishna's killing Aghasura? You do? What's your favorite pastime of Krishna in his childhood? Which one? Aristasura. How about you? Yeah. Huh? Kalia. I spent some time today. We're just meditating on going to Kali Ghat. And Dwadasya Aditya Tila, the place where Krishna became warmed. Up on a hill. Because Krishna was so cold all day long, he was in the water. So at the end of the day, he wanted to get warm. And so the arrangement was made, 12 suns, Dwadasya, like Dwadasi, 12 suns shined on Krishna to warm him up as he's up on top of a hill. And that's where the Madan Mohan temple is. Have you been to Vrindavan? Mm-hmm. You remember going to Madan Mohan temple up on a hill? You don't remember? It's really, really tall and it's thin and narrow at the top. Red sandstone. You're honest. Okay, that's good. Being honest is good. Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit of time with the Aghasura demon pastime. Now, on this particular day, when Krishna had handled the Aghasura demon, Balaram wasn't there. Balaram wasn't there. And here's what it says about why Balaram wasn't there. On the day when Lord Brahma had first come, Baladev could not go with Krishna and the cowherd boys, for it was his birthday. So next time it's Balaram's appearance day, you can remember Krishna killing Aghasura demon on Balaram's birthday. So he didn't go with Krishna and the cowherd boys. His mother had kept him back for a proper ceremonial bath called Shantika Snan. Therefore, Baladev was not taken by Brahma at that time. One year later, Brahma returned, and because he returned at exactly the same day, Baladev was again kept at home for his birthday. Very convenient. Krishna is very good at orchestrating his pastimes. Because if Balaram had been there, the whole pastime would have been spoiled. Because how could he kidnap Balaram? Not possible. So Balaram had to be absent, so it had to take place on a day when he was not there, his birthday. Then he came back 1 year later. So that day, the boys did what they usually do, and there's a long section of how they would play. So there is playful mood. And as they were walking with the cows, exactly the calves, because they were still with calves, they came across this giant thing stretched out in the path that they traveled every day, and they didn't know what that thing was. Some of the boys conjectured, maybe Krishna put this here for us to play with. Some others said some other things, and he assumed Aghasura was a demon, but he had mystic powers, and he assumed a giant python as thick and as big as a mountain, 8 miles long. That's big. How big is Govardhan Hill? 12 kilometers. What is that in miles? About the same? About the same? Govardhan Hill is big. So there's Aghasura. Having assumed this wonderful python body, he spread his mouth like a big cave in the mountains and lay down on the road, expecting to swallow Krishna and his associates, the cowherd boys. Now, Krishna knew what it was, but the cowherd boys, they're in such a playful mood. Some said this, some said that. Some boys said, "Looks like a giant serpent lying in the road. Look out, let's get out of here." And they started running. And the other cowherd boys said, "No, even if that's what the thing is, Krishna has always protected us. Let's go and explore inside." So off they went. And as they started to go, the others followed. And as they started to follow, then the calves followed. And you see Krishna holding up his arm, gesturing. He didn't say anything yet, but he didn't want them to enter the mouth of Aghasura, because he knew. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is situated as Antaryami, the super soul in the core of everyone's heart, heard the boys talking amongst themselves about the artificial python. Unknown to them, it was actually Aghasura, a demon who had appeared as a python. Krishna, knowing this, wanted to forbid his associates to enter the demon's mouth. Now, how do pastimes happen? Pastimes happen when Krishna has a desire. It's called Ichcha Shakti. And Krishna doesn't have to do anything. He just has to desire. And when he desires, his potencies go into action. However, this time, Krishna had a desire, and that's not what happened. Krishna was momentarily struck with wonder and unsure what to do. Now, what's that? It's a pleasure, because everything that Krishna does, he's omniscient, so how can he not know something? It's a pastime where he enjoyed momentarily not knowing what to do, and so he was momentarily unable to know what to do. And then Krishna began to marvel. This is from Jiva Goswami's Priti Sandarbha. Krishna, giver of fearlessness to all beings, saw that all the cowherd boys who did not know anyone but him as their shelter, had now escaped from his hand and were helpless. They were suffering like straws to be burned by the fire of the abdomen of Aghasura, who was death personified. Bewildered by his affection, he was astonished by what had been arranged by his appointed Shakti. This is just worth spending a little bit of time on. That's why I put on the screen. Within Krishna is everything. Say it negatively. There isn't something that exists that's not within Krishna. Say it positively. Everything that exists is within Krishna. So Krishna has, his varieties of enjoyment are without limit because everything is within him. And one of those varieties was not knowing what to do, that he was enjoying that. Another variety was his Icha Shakti was he didn't want the cowherd boys to enter the mouth of Aghasura, but they entered the mouth of Aghasura. So he was now astonished by his own Lila Shakti. Just see what my Lila Shakti is doing. He was enjoying that which it appeared to be outside of his control, but it was fully under his control. Momentarily, he had that moment of an experience that some of us experience too much. But when we experience some of that, it's just a reflection of what's in Krishna. So in that moment, Krishna didn't know what to do. The next moment, he knew what to do. So what did Krishna do? Krishna entered the mouth of Aghasura, and Aghasura then closed his mouth, because he didn't close his mouth when the cowherd boys entered. And if all the cowherd boys entered, then the calves just followed right behind him. And there they are inside the body of Aghasura. And Krishna was thinking, these cowherd boys, even if they can't see me for a moment, I'm on one side of a tree, they're on the other side of the tree, and for that moment that we're passing by a tree, they can't see me. They're in great anxiety. So when they're inside Aghasura's mouth, they won't be able to see me. And how will they maintain their lives? Because their life is being with me. So now I know what to do. He went into the mouth of Aghasura. Aghasura closed his mouth quickly. 8-mile-long serpent. It says the upper jaw was touching the clouds. Big thing. He closed his mouth. So what did Krishna do? He's the master of all mystic powers. And there's 8 principal mystic powers. One of them was Mahima Siddhi. Krishna made his body big. Well, he's a python, so he made his body big to match Krishna's being big. And Krishna became bigger and faster than the python could accommodate Krishna getting bigger and bigger. And so his life air suffocated. And his life air pushed his soul out of the top of his head, just like humans have a soft spot in the top of their head. So apparently Aghasura had one too. And his soul, like a light, went up in the air. The jaw opened. Cowherd boys and Krishna all went marching out of the mouth of Aghasura. And they saw this bright light hovering in the air. And the soul of Aghasura merged with the body of Krishna. He achieved Sayuja Mukti. Demon trying to kill Krishna. In Krishna's, all the demons that were killed by Krishna, they achieved some form of liberation. In this case, he merged within the body of Krishna, Aghasura. And the cowherd boys saw all this happen, and they said, very good, very good. It's time for lunch. And our acharyas comment that every day we hear of principal demons killed by Krishna, but actually it happened every day. One at around 11 o'clock, one at around 4 o'clock. And the reason the timing was there is because the boys would just play and play and play. They wouldn't stop for lunch. So as a signal, time for lunch. And the evening, there was a single, time to go home. It's every day. Principal ones we hear about. Agasura is one of them. So Krishna and the cowherd boys sat around, and by the very near the bank of the river Jamuna, and they had their lunches with them. There's some very nice paintings of the cowherd boys having their lunch together. They sat in a circle, Krishna, of course, at the center, and some of the boys would offer something of the things from their lunch. When Krishna wasn't looking, they would snatch things from his lunch and pop it in their mouth, and it was just playful and playful and more playful. So the whole mood was so joyful. And from the sky, Lord Brahma had observed all of this, because Lord Brahma had come to the earthly realm knowing that Krishna's pastimes were going on, and he wanted to observe them. And so he saw the whole scene. He saw Krishna killing of Agasura. He saw the cowherd boys sitting around having lunch. And then he started, he was astonished. And natural, he was wanting to understand Krishna better. He's Lord Brahma, he knows all the Vedas, but here's a particular pastime he was astonished by, so he began to consider, what's the limit of the power of Krishna? And we know the answer to that. There's no limit. So that part is okay, but the part that wasn't okay was he decided to match his power against Krishna's power to see what Krishna would do. His plan was, by his mystic power, he would scoop up all the calves, and then he would scoop up all the cowherd boys and come back and see what Krishna would do. Maybe he'll cry. Maybe when he sees me, he'll say, "Can you please find the cowherd boys and the calves? I miss them too much." A little puffed up. And you don't mess with Krishna's pastimes like this. So in Krishna's absence, how it happened in his absence is the calves started wandering here and there while they were having their lunch. The cowherd boys noticed the calves are missing. Krishna said, "No problem. You finish your lunch. I'll go find the calves." Now Krishna is omniscient, so he knew what the Lila was going to be. But he went looking for the calves. He couldn't find them. Because Brahma took them and put them in a cave. Now Krishna knew where they were, but Krishna couldn't find them. It's another part of the pastime of Krishna where he's enjoying being bewildered, or apparently being bewildered, but not like us. And then when Krishna was gone and the calves were gone, then Brahma came and took the cowherd boys and put them in the cave. And Krishna came back and couldn't find the calves and the cowherd boys. And he was astonished. He was enjoying that emotion. So here's a painting where it shows the calves are wandering, and the cowherd boys are sitting together having their lunch. And as the calves began wandering, then this discussion, who was going to find the calves? Krishna said, "I'll go find the calves. You finish." And here's Brahma taking the calves to put them in a cave. Krishna went to look for the calves, and Brahma came and took the cowherd boys. There's Brahma on the left. And there's Brahma putting the calves and the cowherd boys in a cave. And as criminals sometimes do, he went back to the scene of the crime. He wanted to see what's Krishna going to do. When Krishna was unable to find the calves, he returned to the bank of the river. But there he was unable to see the cowherd boys. Thus he began to search for both the calves and the cowherd boys, everywhere, in the forest, as if he wasn't omniscient. He was enjoying. One has to appreciate, to correctly appreciate Krishna's pastimes, the fundamental principle is varieties of emotion experienced by the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to his desire to experience varieties of emotion. And it's likened to waves in a river. The whole of Krishna's pastime, not just him. But in a river, it's a flow of water. And sometimes in the flow of water, there's a wave that rises. And over there is another wave that kind of comes and crashes into the wave that rises. And there's some churning. And then both waves subside, and here comes some other waves, and here comes some other waves. And it just keeps flowing like waves in a river. So the pastimes of Krishna are like that for the purpose of varieties of enjoyment of Krishna. Things keep flowing and flowing. This is the description of Brahma's Maya. Brahma's Maya was that Krishna couldn't find them. It should be understood that the Lord, by his own desire, accepted this position of bewilderment in order to have pleasing pastimes with his great devotee Brahma. So when Brahma came back to the scene of the crime to see what Krishna would do, he was astonished. There was Krishna with all the cowherd boys having their lunch. There you see Brahma up in the sky, seeing them having their lunch. So he went back to the cave, and there they were in the cave. So he went back again to where they were having lunch, and there they were having lunch. And while Brahma looked on, several things happened. All the calves and the cowherd boys, simultaneously looking as calves and cowherd boys, appeared to have complexions the color of bluish rain clouds and to be dressed in yellow silken garments. In other words, forms of Narayan manifested for each one of the calves and each one of the cowherd boys, while the forms of the calves and the cowherd boys were simultaneously being manifest. And then Brahma saw all the Vishnu Murtis were surrounded by the opulences of Vishnu, headed by Anima Siddhi, by the mystic potencies, headed by Aja, and by the 24 elements of the creation of the material world, headed by the Mahatattva. Now, all of these potencies are personified. Some of you like reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm sure. And when you read Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Lord Brahma sees a similar scene. It's before creation, and he has just completed his tapa, and before him appears Lord Vishnu. So he comes before Lord Vishnu and sees surrounding Lord Vishnu are the 9 and the 16 and the this and the that. These are all of his potencies personified. Say it backwards. Everything that exists has Krishna as the source of emanation. And just as Krishna is a person, all of his emanations in the spiritual realm, they're also persons, and they have their expansions of their Shaktis that manifest themselves in this world. But behind those Shaktis that are operating in this world, there's the spiritual personality. So Brahma saw all those personalities surrounding each one of the forms of Vishnu. Then Lord Brahma saw Kala, Swabhava, Samskara, Kama, Karma, and the gunas, their own independence being completely subordinate to the potency of the Lord, had all taken forms. And were all worshipping those Vishnu Murtis. So, for example, has anyone seen time? No such thing. We can see, the measure of time. We have watches and other ways of measuring time. We can measure time, but have anyone seen time? Brahma saw time personified. What did that look like? And swabhava means one's nature. What did that look like? Etc. But the basis and support of everything is person. There's the Supreme Person and the manifestations, unlimited manifestations of the Supreme Person. Brahma saw the whole thing. And not just one of each, but there's each of the Vishnu forms had all these Shaktis surrounding them. And they're all offering prayers. The personified Vedas surrounding each one of the forms of Vishnu. It must have been this big sound of prayers and praises, simply waiting for some indication from Krishna so they could do some service. There's a phrase used, Nija Mahi Mani, Atarkya Nija Mahamani. Tarkya means reason and logic, and atarkya means inconceivable. He had inconceivable opulences. And there's another painting of the same. There's Brahma seeing all these forms of Vishnu or Narayana, and all these personalities surrounding Narayana, and this big cacophony of sound worshiping them, each one simultaneously, the calves and the cowherd boys. And then what happened? Poof, they all disappeared. They all disappeared. And instead of all of what he saw just Krishna standing there with, in his left hand, because he eats with his right hand, lump of yogurt and some rice and some fruit, staring at Brahma with unblinking eyes. Krishna didn't say anything, but he fulfilled Brahma's desire. What was Brahma's desire? What's the limit of Krishna's opulence? I know. I'll test my opulence against my mystic powers against his mystic powers and see who wins. Big mistake. Big mistake. It was an offense. I mean, it wasn't the same offense that Indra made, but it was a big offense. He interrupted Krishna's pastimes, and he kidnapped his dear devotees and calves. He's the protector of calves, and he kidnapped them, put them in a cave. Bad. Why did he do something so bad? He was just curious. In his curiosity, got carried away and did something really bad. So there are many paintings where this is a devotee made this painting in Portland. I liked it very much, so I had them scan a copy of it for me. Here's the BBT painting. There's Krishna with his left hand raised underneath a tree, Brahma with his foreheads and palms folded, offering wonderful prayers. A very significant set of prayers. Some of you like to learn verses, I heard. So it's a really nice set of prayers to learn. Some of them, several of them, are often quoted verses by our founder Acharya. I'll be mentioning a couple of them. There's another nice painting. And my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. Does anyone here, to raise your hand, don't say, who knows the verse? I see one hand, two hands. Let me give you some hints. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is having his talks with Ramananda Roy, Lord Chaitanya met Ramananda Roy in his travel in South India, advised by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Ramananda Roy at that time was the governor of of then when it was written, it was Madras, Chennai, the big tract in the King Prataparudra's kingdom, extended down that far. So Ramananda Roy met with Lord Chaitanya, and they were both in ecstasy, seeing one another. They arranged to meet in the evening, and Lord Chaitanya in the evening asked a question and wanted Ramananda Roy to respond. The question was, what's the goal of life and how to attain it? That's a great place to start a conversation, isn't it? What's the goal of life and how to attain it? And there's this very significant section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Ramananda Roy started with one and then went to another, went to another, and then went to another. Each time Lord Chaitanya said, go further. Included in that going to the next one was one of our celebrated Bhagavad Gita verses, Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. Lord Chaitanya said, go further. So what's further? That's the essence of Bhagavad Gita. This verse is the verse that he accepted. Tateno kampam susamik shamano. You want to recite the verse? And can you remember the verse that well, Namapriya? You have it in front of you. Sadhaya Bhak. It becomes his rightful claim to enter into the kingdom of God. It has become his rightful claim by Tanuvan Manobir. Tanu, Van, your body, your mind, and your words. Tanuvan Manobir, dedicated to the service of the personality of Godhead. All the while, patiently enduring whatever are the reactions that have come from past misdeeds, whatever that is. I'm not going to absorb myself in counteracting or neutralizing or anything like that. Whatever is coming to me, let it come to me. So Brahma knew, because the previous verses, I've done a really bad thing. And from that really bad thing, I'm going to get a bad reaction. And I'm not going to ask you to please minimize the reaction. Whatever it is that I am to endure, let it come. So rather, let my attention just go to one thing. Being at your lotus feet, using my body, my mind, and my words, Tanuvan Manobir, in your service. Knowing that by doing so, that dedication makes entrance into the kingdom of God my rightful claim. A very nice verse. Very nice verse. And here's another one, celebrated verse. O infallible Lord, kindly excuse my offenses. I've taken birth in the mode of passion, and therefore I'm simply foolish, presuming myself a controller, independent of your lordship. My eyes are blinded by the darkness of ignorance, which causes me to think of myself as the unborn creator of the universe. But please consider that I am your servant and therefore worthy of your compassion. Now, I'm just making fun of the drawing. The drawing looks like a duck. It's the swan carrier of Brahma is much bigger than this guy. But anyway, O Lord Adhoksaja, does a mother take offense when the child within her womb kicks with his legs? And is there anything in existence, whether designated by various philosophers as real or as unreal, that is actually outside your abdomen. Having thus offered his prayers, Brahma circumambulated his worshipable Lord, the unlimited personality of Godhead, 3 times, and then bowed down at his lotus feet. The appointed creator of the universe then returned to his own residence. Now, the prayers are very wonderful, and maybe you'll be inspired to read them at your leisure. They're philosophically strong, but they're filled with this mood of submission again and again and again, and regret for his mistakes. Bhaktivinoda Thakur teaches that for a Vaishnava, one form of tapa is to regret. He doesn't dwell on the mistakes, but the regret, the foolishness with which I was living my life and doing foolish things. And then go on with the positive. So when all of the prayers of Brahma were finished, commonly Krishna would then say something, words of encouragement or something. Krishna didn't say anything. The Acharyas comment, he was just waiting for him to finish because he wanted to get back and have lunch with the cowherd boys. In other words, for Krishna, that's more meaningful than the most exalted prayers of the most learned person in the universe. These sweet, loving pastimes with his loving associates in Vrindavan is his topmost happiness. Meanwhile, this is in the same chapter, there's this nice discussion about that time that Brahma was gone was but a short while in Brahma's time, but a whole year had passed on earth. Time is relative, right? Einstein says. And the Vedas say time is relative. So for the higher planets, a short while can be a whole year. So during the time that Brahma was gone, checking back in the cave to see if the cowherd boys were there, 1 year passed on earth. So what happened during that 1 year? During that 1 year, Krishna was fulfilling the desire of the mothers of his cowherd friends to have Krishna as their son. Now, those of you that are parents, you may have some liking or some appreciation for other boys or girls than your own boys and girls. But you have naturally special affection for your own son or daughter. However, in Vrindavan, the mothers had more affection for Krishna than they had for their own son. Because when Krishna he became their son. And for the cows, he became their calf. Because the cows desired to give their milk directly to Krishna as they were giving to their calf. So Krishna became their calf. And Krishna became the boys. So much identical that the mothers didn't even notice it wasn't their son. That's not possible. Voice inflection and mannerisms and everything. Mothers know, but they didn't know. Not only they didn't know, but Balaram also didn't know. Not possible. Well, it's possible because of Krishna's potencies. And so Krishna, fulfilled the desires of the mothers to have Krishna as their son for 1 year. And they were astonished that their affection for their son grew comparable to their affection that they had for Krishna, who they loved more than their son. And now they have love for their son, who was Krishna, like their love for Krishna, when he wasn't their son. And towards the end of the year, about 4 or 5 days before the end of the year, this scene is described where the calves were at the bottom of Govardhan Hill, the cows were up on Govardhan Hill, and the cows saw their calves. I don't know if you've ever seen a cow run, but they run. I mean, it's kind of awkward, but they can run. So the cows started running down the hill to be with their calves because their calf is Krishna. And the cowherd men saw the cows running down the hill, so they followed behind with their sticks raised, saying in whatever language they used, "Stop." But the cows didn't stop because they wanted to be with their calves who were Krishna. And the cowherd men, when they got to the bottom, they completely forgot about the cows because they saw their boys. And the painting shows they just were embracing with great love and affection their boys. And you see standing next to next to Krishna is Balaram. And he figured it out. What happened was, for Krishna to enjoy this pastime, he had Balaram covered with Yogamaya, so he couldn't understand what was going on. Because it would have spoiled the whole pastime if he knew what was going on. It was actually Krishna as each one of the cowherd boys and each one of the calves. So the curtain started to pull back a little bit, and he started to understand it. So he asked Krishna what was going on. Krishna smiled. Then Krishna told him what's going on. And Balaram was astonished because he enjoys everything. There are some pastimes where Balaram also becomes astonished. And it's a loving mood. It's an emotion, a transcendental emotion. It's not like our emotions. Here's a close-up of that same painting. One of the cowherd boys is standing off to the side watching all this. And the cows are with their calves, and the cowherd men are with their boys. And Krishna and Balaram are enjoying this loving exchange. This is verse directly from this chapter. Because of an increase of affection, the cows had constant attachment, even to those calves that were grown up and had stopped sucking milk from their mothers. When Baladev saw this attachment, he was unable to understand the reason for it, and thus he began to consider as follows. So he's contemplating what's going on. Even Balaram did not know that all the calves and cowherd boys were expansions of Krishna, or that he himself was also an expansion of Krishna. This was disclosed to Balaram just 5 or 6 days before the completion of the year. So we're getting a display in this pastime of, we had some discussion earlier when we visited Vrindakund. Yesterday we visited Vrindakund. Vrindakund is a manifestation of Krishna's Lila Shakti. Purnamasi is the manifestation of Krishna's Yogamaya potency in Vrindavan. So by the two, the Yogamaya potency of Krishna, assisted by his Lila Shakti, this pastime became possible. For Krishna's pleasure, and fulfilling the desire of the mothers, and fulfilling desires of the cows, and fulfilling the desires of the cowherd men, and giving Balaram a chance to also experience wonder and astonishment, all in one pastime. The commentary also says it confirms this Chandogya Upanishad terse statement, Eko Bahu Sham. The one became many. But Krishna did that other times too. He manifested as so many Krishnas in Dwarka. He manifested so many Krishnas in the Rasa dance. When Krishna went to visit on the eastern side of India, King Bahulashva, he manifested as 2 Krishnas because Shrutadev also wanted him to come to his place for lunch. So Eko Bahusham, no problem for Krishna. He just manifests many Krishnas. And not even just looking like Krishna, but looking like however he wants to look like. Because the cowherd boys, before they were Krishna's cowherd boys, they were Krishna's cowherd boys. Exact mannerisms, everything, because everything comes from Krishna. So he can make duplicates, no problem. Now, for somebody that's an atheist or a rationalist, this is like silly talk. And for a devotee, it's relish, it's appreciation. How wonderful is my Krishna? Is there a limit? There's no limit. Jiva Goswami expresses like this. It's very succinct. To understand the personality of Godhead, there must be, in principle, the acceptance that the personality of Godhead has unlimited and inconceivable potencies. Negatively, if one doesn't accept that, there's no question of understanding the personality of Godhead. Positive, when you understand that, then it explains so many things. Because it's just a manifestation of his unlimited and inconceivable potencies. It's a big teaching. Big teaching. Just sharing this off to the side. I spent 6 hours on a topic with the Chinese devotees because in China, Buddhism is really prominent. Even the people that don't know what Buddhism is, they say they're Buddhist. They ask them, scratch the surface a little bit, and they really don't know. So 6 hours on this topic I just mentioned, and what Buddha says, or the followers of Buddha say, about tattva, about the reality. And they don't accept that the personality of Godhead has unlimited and inconceivable potencies. So when it comes to identity, I'm not going to do the 6-hour seminar right now, but that statement by Jiva Goswami, he's so refined, it takes 6 hours to explain how he explains it. In detail and in detail and detail. There's lots of detail. Buddha's a major part, there's many different brands of Buddhism, but most of the major brands of Buddhism have a teaching that says Kshanik Vijnanavad. Vada means doctrine. Kshanik or Kshana means a moment. Pratikshana svadanalolupasya. Kshana means just a moment. And in his teaching, Vijnana means consciousness. We don't use that word for consciousness, but he does. Kshanik Vijnanavad. All that exists is the moment. You've heard this one before. Be in the moment. Or, in even shorter, mindfulness. It's very popular. Where does it come from? It comes from Buddhism. Because all there is the moment. The past doesn't exist anymore. The future doesn't exist. All there is the moment. So be in the moment, because that's all that exists is the moment. And if you want to become enlightened, you get really good at being in the moment so you can go on the other side of being in the moment. What's on the other side of being in the moment? Nothing. Shunyavad. So Jiva Goswami takes the teaching, looks at it in 16 different ways, holds it up in the air, and then takes the Vedic conclusion that says that's not true. And it comes back to the personality of Godhead has unlimited and inconceivable potencies. I won't do the whole thing, but he's good, Jiva Goswami. So Ekabahusham isn't fiction; it's absolute truth. It's the Upanishadic absolute truth, and when you take that absolute truth into Krishna's pastimes, Krishna becomes many, no problem. How does he do it? His unlimited and inconceivable potencies. Because that's what Brahma wanted to examine. He got more than he bargained for. Krishna showed him all those potencies. For that 1 year, while he was away, Krishna showed to all the cowherd men and all the cowherd ladies and all the cows. He became them, himself personally. It's just fantastic. Eko Bahusham. And his opulences are unlimited. That's a conclusion of the Brahma-vimohan Lila, which we'll hear about when we visit Brahma Kunda. Here's something from Garga Samhita, and this is the end of our first visit. Garga Samhita narrates Krishna's marriage to all the gopis. At the time, Krishna assumed the form of those cowherd boys who were stolen by Brahma for the period of 1 year. Inspired by Yogamaya, the Vrajavasis married their sons to the gopis of Vraja, not knowing that in truth they were marrying Krishna to the gopis. And after the 1 year, they were all married. And then the cowherd boys that they were married to somehow understood that I'm married to this girl. And in Vedic culture, the boys and girls would marry young. They didn't live together. Prabhupada describes on their birthday, the girl would bring something they cooked or something nice. And the young boy would think, oh, she's such a good cook. One day we'll be married. One day we'll live together. And when they grow up and live together, they're already married. They don't have to go through that mind-spinning thing about who they're going to marry. That was the Vedic culture. Then, the millions of gopi girls who were all deeply in love with Krishna were married to the many gopa boys who at that time were all forms of Krishna. So that's it for the first place we're visiting this evening, virtually. The next place is Chir Ghat. There's a nice pastime that we'll describe. But first, let's take a look at the map of Sri Brajamandala and look up on the right-hand side, look carefully, and you can see the letters for Chir Ghat. Now, there are two places in Vrindavan I've come to learn where they say this is Chir Ghat. One is a little bit remote, like this, and another is towards the downtown area, near the river Jamuna. Both of them are there. And the one that's near the river Jamuna, this is a photograph of the tree. It's a Kadamba tree, old Kadamba tree that Krishna climbed up. Somebody made this painting, it's in my room, of the deity of Krishna holding up the cloth of the gopis. Here's the deity that's in the tree, dressed in a certain day. Here's the same deity from the side, dressed in a different day. Here's a front view of the same deity holding up the garments of the gopis. And the more remote place looks like this. So these are the two places. And you look high up in the tree, there's the deity. Yes? Yeah, right here. Dressed in red, holding the garments of the gopis. So what did the gopis do? There's a particular vrata that takes place during the coldest month of the year. Magashirsha is the coldest month of the year. It's toward the end of December and the beginning part of January. And those of you that like going to Vrindavan generally don't go at that time because it's so cold. It's ice cold at night especially. And so what the gopis did for a whole month, they underwent this vrata, as you see in the painting. They fashioned from the soil by the side of the river Jamuna, because they didn't have wealth. They used mud and water and fashioned a deity of Katyayani. And it's the story itself is so sweet, how they spoke to one another, how they made decisions about what they would do. no envy, no material competition at all. They all wanted the same thing. All these girls all wanted the same boyfriend. Imagine that. And no competition, no enmity, none of that stuff. So they had one meal a day, havishan. It's unspiced khichdi, no salt. Sometimes Bhakti Siddhanta would do this practice during the 4 months of Kartik season. Do you know about that one? So khichdi with no salt. Yummy. Khichdi with no salt once a day. And the practice that he would follow is he wouldn't use his hands. They put the khichdi on the floor in front of him, and he would lean over and eat with his mouth, not with his hands, until he could, until he was not going to be able to eat anymore. And then he sat up. And when you lean over, your stomach scrunches. So your capacity for eating is already diminished. And he had this big beard and get his beard all messed up. And that's what he did for 4 months. Now, the gopis did it for 1 month. And they didn't, have beards. And they didn't lean over and eat from their mouths only. But anyway, it's a certain kind of austerity. It's for the purification of the body and strengthening of the mind. And every day they had this prayer. I'll just read the Sanskrit. O Goddess Katyayani, O great potency of the Lord, O possessor of great mystic power and mighty controller of all, please make the son of Nanda Maharaj my husband. I offer my obeisances unto you. And guess what? They all said the same thing. Now this is Vedic culture, where it's not like, a man can marry many women, but not many women can marry one man, unless you're, very exceptional Draupadi. But it's just not part of Vedic culture. But they didn't have any enmity towards one another. Like they're in another world. And not only they're in another world, their understanding was, who's Katyayani? Katyayani is another name of Durga. Like when Krishna arranged for Yogamaya to take birth in the womb of Rohini, birth in the womb of Yashoda, and Krishna was going to be switched out. So the female child would be brought back, right? Yogamaya. The female child would be brought back, and Krishna would stay with safety in the care of Yashodananda. Yogamaya would be brought back. Kamsa will try to kill you, but don't worry, he can't kill you because you're Yogamaya. And after that, the next services, you'll perform your service as Durga with different names. So one of those different names is Katyayani. Katyayani is the name of Durga. So the gopis were worshipping Durga to get Krishna as their husband, or Katyayani to get Krishna as their husband. But there's a nice explanation, because the gopis don't have anything to do with material affairs. So why are they worshipping Katyayani? Here's an explanation. In this transcendental sound vibration, this prayer to Katyayani, glorifying and worshipping Krishna, the presiding deity of the particular mantra, is Durga. The name Durga, therefore, refers to that personality who functioned as the internal potency of the Lord, and who is thus on the platform of Shuddha Sattva, pure transcendental existence. This internal potency is understood to be Krishna's sister, known also as Ekanangsha or Subhadra. This is the Durga who was worshipped by the gopis in Vrindavan. And scriptural support for that comes from the Narada Pancharatra. The goddess Durga mentioned in this verse is not the illusory energy of Krishna called Maya, but rather the internal potency of the Lord known as Yogamaya. The distinction between the internal and external, or illusory, potency of the Lord is described in the Narada Pancharatra in the conversation between Shruti and Vidya. Now, this is taken from Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary. Here's the Narada Pancharatra. Who were the gopis worshipping? The Lord's inferior potency, known as Durga, is dedicated to his loving service. Being the Lord's potency, this inferior energy is non-different from him. There is another superior potency whose form is on the same spiritual level as that of God himself. Simply by scientifically understanding this supreme potency, one can immediately achieve the supreme soul of all souls, who is the Lord of all lords. There is no other process to achieve him. That supreme potency of the Lord is known as Gokuleshwari, the goddess of Gokula. Her nature is to be completely absorbed in love of God, and through her one can easily obtain the primeval God, the Lord of all that be. This internal potency of the Lord has a covering potency known as Mahamaya, who rules the material world. In fact, she bewilders the entire universe, and thus everyone within the universe falsely identifies himself with the material body. So in short, the gopis were worshipping Katyayani not as the material energy, but the spiritual energy to give them access to Krishna becoming their husband. It's an important detail. That means not just a detail, important philosophical understanding. They're simple village girls. What do they know? But their love for Krishna puts them in direct contact with the internal potency. And so the pastime unfolds. It's very, very interesting. Krishna knows. And on the final day, on the Purnima day, at the end of that Magashirsha month, there's a final ritual that they're supposed to do. Same other elements as all the other days. So significant was this day, it's said that they requested Radharani to also come with them. So there's all the gopis, and they're bathing, and they put their clothes by the side of the river. Krishna came with little friends. Krishna wasn't alone. There were Priyanarma Sakhas, boys that were 3 and 4 years old. They don't know anything about boy-girl stuff. But Krishna had trained them up, what to say when the gopis would ask them different questions. The dialogue is very sweet. And so, they're immersed themselves up to their neck in the water because their clothes are on the side of the river, and Krishna's gathered up their clothes. He's holding onto their clothes and draped them, and in the top of this kadamba tree. And this conversation is fantastic. You see, I like this part. This is the Katyayani deity dressed up by them in some garments, but it's the deity just made of earth, because they're not wealthy. They're just village girls. But they knew enough that this is an acceptable form of worship, and so that's what they did. And they were worshiping in this manner. So the exchange goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's very, I want to read a little bit. It's from Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. I'll read the verse from the Bhagavatam, and then Vishwanath's excellent breaking down the verse. Krishna says, "My dear girls, you may each come here as you wish and take back your garments. I'm telling you the truth, and I'm not joking with you, since you are fatigued from executing austere vows. I never lie. Just ask these boys." Come. Seeing how Krishna was joking with them, the gopis became fully immersed in love for him, and as they glanced at each other, they began to laugh and joke among themselves, even in their embarrassment. But still they did not come out of the water. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's glossing. The gopis were from most respectable families, and they might have argued with Krishna, "Why don't you simply leave our clothes on the bank of the river and go away?" Krishna might have replied, "But there are so many of you that some of the girls might take clothes belonging to another." The gopis would reply, "We are honest and never steal anything. We never touch another's property." Then Krishna would say, "If that's true, then simply come and get your clothes. What's the difficulty?" When the gopis saw Krishna's determination, they were filled with loving ecstasy. Although embarrassed, they were overjoyed to receive such attention from Krishna. He was joking with them as if they were his wives or girlfriends, and the gopis' only desire was to achieve such a relationship with him. At the same time, they were embarrassed. But still they could not help laughing at his joking words, and even began to joke among themselves. One gopi urging another, "Go ahead, you go first, and let us see if Krishna plays any other tricks on you. Then we will go later." Krishna says, "Oh, bird-like girls, if you don't come here, then with these garments caught in the branches, I'll make a swing and a hammock. I need to lie down since I have spent the entire night awake and am now becoming sleepy." "Oh, dear cowherd boy, your cows, greedy for grass, have gone into a cave, so you must quickly go there and herd them back on the proper path." Krishna, "Come now, my dear cowherd girls, you must quickly go from here to Vraja and perform your household duties. Don't become a disturbance to your parents and other elders." Gopis, "Our dear Krishna, we will not go home for an entire month, for it is by the order of our parents and other elders that we are executing this vow of fasting, the Katyayani Vrata." Krishna, "My dear austere ladies, I too, by the strength of seeing you, have now developed a surprising mood of detachment from family life. I wish to stay here for a month and execute the vow of dwelling in the clouds. And if you show mercy to me, I can come down from here and observe the vow of fasting in your company." And it goes on and on. It's just childlike talk and exchanges that are inconclusive, and whenever they say, Krishna says something funny, because the one thing is he wants them to go through the most humbling of all experiences, come before Krishna and, with their palms folded above their heads. In other words, they can't cover their bodies otherwise. Pray to him for his clothes so he'll give them the clothes. And they give different arguments and different arguments and different arguments. It's a lovely pastime. And the conclusion of the pastime is especially nice. You can see there's many paintings. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes Kartik Mahatmya section of Padma Purana. Kaishore Gopikanyas ta Yovane Raja Kanyaka. You're used to it, I'm not. So the translation from Padma Purana. those who were the daughters of cowherds in their early youth became royal princesses in their maturity. And he adds, therefore, just as the Lord of Dwarka is a plenary expansion of the supremely complete Lord of Sri Vrindavan, so his principal queens are full expansions of his supremely complete pleasure potencies, the gopis. So Krishna concludes, surely your desire will be fulfilled. And he doesn't go against his word. He fulfills his desire, something we've discussed now 2 times. The third time is each of the gopis, by their expansions, became queens in Dwarka. And he married them in Dwarka. 16,100 of them, in addition to the 8. So there's it's a chance. It's not an easy pastime to assimilate because of worldly considerations, worldly everything. But the essence is this is a transcendental pastime where, just as Krishna with the cowherd boys enjoys pastimes. There's extensive discussion of how the boys would enjoy together. There's passages where Prabhupada was speaking about the happiness of the cowherd boys. It's a nice section. Shrutakirti, one of Prabhupada's disciples who was his servant for some time, one of his services, Prabhupada had kidney problems. Boys, Prabhupada had kidney problems. One of his kidneys didn't work at all. And another one of the kidneys was half. And one of the functions of a kidney is to eliminate poisons through urine, through the body. But his kidneys weren't working. So the toxins, poisons, were building up in his body. And it's for that reason that he had massage, because it was painful. But he didn't complain about it, it's just that was done so because the kidneys weren't doing their job, so the massage was doing the job. So one time, Shrutakirti has this nice passage in his book. Prabhupada was describing life in Vrindavan for the cowherd boys. And he was just in a mood. He was just gone. He was with the cowherd boys in Vrindavan. And saying, I'm very eager to return to the spiritual world. Now, some people take that exchange with Prabhupada as that was his rasa. In any case, there's wonderful exchanges with Krishna and the cowherd boys, and wonderful exchanges with Krishna and the gopis. And it's not the same, but it's not mundane. It's fully on the transcendental platform. These are personalities who have, for starters, they have no envy. That's spiritual. Everyone on the material plane has envy, and they're competitive and all those things. None of that was there. So anyway, their love for Krishna was fully transcendental. At the same time, he knows, and they know, there's codes of morality that the world lives by, and they were violating codes of morality when Krishna played upon his flute and called them, etc. Thus, their exaltedness or their attachment to Krishna. Now, worldly people don't do things like that. But the residents of Vrindavan were beyond worldly considerations. They didn't flaunt worldly considerations, but they weren't bound by them. They were bound by very strong love for Krishna. So one of the things visiting Vrindavan, I'm looking forward to, not just these extreme things, but a mood of absorption in thought of Krishna, where it's just different. It's the transcendental reality being played out before us. And like Prabhupada would say, whether we understand or we don't understand, the spiritual potency is there when people hear the Hare Krishna mantra, when people hear the pastimes of Krishna, when people see the nice paintings of Krishna and Krishna's activities with his devotees. he's giving everyone the fullness of their happiness, as with Brahma, as with the cows, as with the cowherd boys, as with the gopis, the fullness of their capacity for happiness. That's Krishna. And we're being invited to join Krishna in his eternal pastimes. So let's see if there's some discussion. We've only been going for an hour and a half. It's 8 o'clock. See if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj. So one question I had from the Brahma pastime is, so what is the practical lesson for us? I mean, it looks like it's very out of reach. Brahma was an elevated personality. He wanted to test Krishna. So it's beyond my reach of understanding what in it is for me. How do we understand this pastime as a practical application or learning for us?
Several things. One of those several things is Krishna is very expert at curbing pride, and even his exalted devotees may have some kind of pride. And Krishna is very expert. Krishna is very expert at curbing others' pride. So someone like Brahma, as elevated as he is, he knows he has powers and he sees Krishna exhibiting. So the lesson for us is never cross that boundary. Whatever it is that we have is limited or whatever it is. It's something that can be the cause of pride. Never let pride enter. That is, whatever is given to us is meant for Krishna's service. And don't cross that boundary. Another lesson is that because Brahma is so dear to Krishna, he fulfilled his desire. But he fulfilled his desire in such a way that he now understood the unlimitedness of Krishna, and because of his gift of intelligence, he was able to offer beautiful, beautiful prayers. So the prayers of Brahma are lessons for us also. Brahma is disclosing truths about Krishna that if it wasn't for this pastime, we wouldn't know. The truth about Krishna were given by Brahma were very special. It's a little bit like, it's not the same, but it's a little bit like Arjuna being bewildered. So it gave Krishna an opportunity to speak Bhagavad Gita. And in this case, it gave Brahma a chance to speak transcendental knowledge in the presence of Krishna. So, a lesson, you're saying the lesson for us to learn. Not likely Krishna's going to go out of his way to put us into some upside down situation where we then have the opportunity to show the world that, things are not like everyone thinks they are. So the lesson is the eloquence of Brahma is a gift of Krishna, and whatever ability we have to speak, it's also a gift of Krishna. So that's, I think, a very important lesson. It's something like when Arjuna comes back and reports to Yudhisthira what happened, because he was sent by Yudhisthira. Please go to Dwarka and find out what's going on with Krishna. We have a sense that his pastimes are going to end. We see bad signs. So when Arjuna comes back, he describes what happened, and describes that he had no capacity to even fend off cowherd men, before he was fighting off, great warriors. His ability to do what he was doing with the great warriors was a gift from Krishna. And if Krishna withdraws that gift, then there's no ability. So whatever ability we have, whatever ability Brahma has, whatever anyone has, it's an investment given by Krishna meant to be used in his service and not otherwise. It's not like we don't know those things. But the pastime is teaching us yet again and yet again. Something else? Looks like you're letting me off easy tonight. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki? Good night.